Buenas tardes a todos, ¿cómo están? Bueno, ahora vamos a tener un invitado muy especial. Este live va a ser en inglés. Tenemos de invitado a Nick Norwitz. Nick es el autor de un estudio de demostración que habla de las galletitas Oreo versus las estatinas en una población, en realidad es en él mismo, de los flacos hiperrespondedores, que son los lean mass hyper responders. Este vivo lo vamos a hacer en inglés, porque bueno, él no habla español, le pedí que hable despacito, vamos a ver si nos puede hacer entender. Vamos a subtitularlo, vamos a guardarlo y lo vamos a dejar subtitulado, así que los comentarios haters se los guardan, por favor, porque esto no es tan fácil de hacer. Y bueno, así que vamos ahora a hacerlo entrar a Nick, que se presente quién es. Es el autor de este estudio raro. ¿Y esto para quién es? Primero, ¿para quién es? Si sos flaco y te subió el colesterol cuando empezaste a hacer una dieta keto o low carb, si haces mucho ejercicio y sos muy sensible a la insulina, te puede pasar eso, te puede subir el colesterol. Ahora Nick nos va a explicar cómo es este modelo, por qué pasa esto y por qué eligió las galletitas Oreo para compararlas con las drogas, digamos, con las estatinas. Así que ahora ya mismo lo voy a hacer entrar a Nick. Vamos a ver si se me da en inglés. Creo que voy a sacar los comentarios porque me van a distraer. A ver, ¿cómo se hace? Bueno, nada, solamente no vamos a mirar los comentarios, pero a ver si está ahí Nick. Ahí estás, Nick. Parece. I am inviting you, Nick. I was telling people that there you are. Hi, Nick.
Hello, can you hear
Welcome.
me? Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I'm monolingual. I'll try to speak slowly, although I have a tendency to speak fast. But yeah, where do you want to start?
Okay, let's tell people how you got into this condition of lean mass hyperresponder.
Yeah.
Tell us your story. How you came up with this?
Right. So like a lot of people, I came to a low-carb or ketogenic diet through my own metabolic health needs. So for me, I was suffering with something called inflammatory bowel disease, which is where ulcers were open in your GI system and your intestines. You bleed a lot. It's really unpleasant. And it was really debilitating for me in terms of my life. And I experimented with a lot of things and found out that cutting out carbs and sugar really worked for me. So I went on a ketogenic diet and I felt a lot better. My inflammation went down. I went into remission and I reclaimed my quality of life. I was able to finish up grad school, my PhD at Oxford, and start medical school, which was all lovely. But when I got my cholesterol checked, my lipids, I found that my LDL cholesterol, which some people call the bad cholesterol, had gone sky high, which was very surprising because the way I was eating, I thought I was eating very healthy, and I just presumed that high cholesterol was a bad thing. So, you know, I was eating lots of salmon and avocado, lots of greens and fish. So I was really perturbed. I was really confused. Why would my cholesterol be so high? And so that started me on a research journey with me and my friends to discover the answer to this question. Why do some people who go low carb see these massive increases in their cholesterol? And long story short, what we're discovering is something quite counterintuitive, that in the people who see the largest increases in cholesterol when they're low carb, it's typically not because of things like genetics or saturated fat or because somebody's unhealthy, but rather because they're lean, they're insulin sensitive and actually metabolically healthy. And this appears to be what we think is a manifestation of your body switching fuel sources, going from carb burning to fat burning. And the cholesterol response that you see is a result of this metabolic shift. And so we're studying the mechanisms behind that and also the consequences of that. You know, is this actually dangerous? We don't know, because this has never really properly been studied, which may sound surprising, but it is indeed the truth that this is an understudied area. You'd think that medicine has this kind of thing figured out, but historically there have not been a lot of populations who are lean and low carb. So we're only now discovering this, and I think it's a very important area of research because low carb diets do have such a wide range of applications, from treating obesity, diabetes, and metabolic diseases, mental health disorders. And in order to implement them clinically, we need to kind of get the boogeyman out of the way, with the boogeyman being the cholesterol response. So we need to understand this better. So that's what we've been studying for a little bit of time.
Right. And now this is something new because in the 80s or 60s, low carb diets were used only for weight loss. And now some people are using this for other applications, even longevity, right? So that happened to me because I practice functional medicine, and I have a lot of patients like you, that it's a struggle with cardiologists because we really don't know what to do with these patients, right? And
Right.
most of them tell them, go back to carbs, which works, they load, or take a statin. And the patient would say, why would I do that if I am healthy? I feel good. Will I really die from a heart attack, or will I have more longevity? So
Yeah.
if you want to go a little bit on that.
Sure. Well, I would say that we don't know. And while you might feel good, with respect to heart health, it's not necessarily something that you feel. You don't feel plaque progressing in your arteries.
Right.
So you could have plaque progressing and not know it. And, it used to be, it's not anymore, but it used to be the first sign of, a heart attack was death.
Right.
Like your arteries clog, your heart is starved of oxygen and it dies. So I think in general, because there's so little information, you want to be clinically conservative, which means that all things being equal, if you're someone who, like me, is a lean mass hyperresponder and your LDL goes crazy, crazy high and we don't know what the risk is, and you don't need a ketogenic diet therapeutically, then maybe it makes sense to toy with a little bit of carbohydrates. Have a little bit of fruit, like a banana or two, a sweet potato, and it can reduce your levels and, so you're not gambling. That said, some people need ketogenic diets therapeutically, like me. And what do you do if you're in that position? Well, I think the scientific thing and the intellectually honest thing to do is say, look, we don't know the answer. It's kind of crappy to say that, but we don't. And so what we need to do now is, as a scientific community, come together and study this phenomenon so people can make more informed decisions. And so I think the dialogue you'll hear is often very polarized, where people say it's not a problem or it is a problem. The only honest thing I can say to you is, I'm sorry we don't know. It's a very interesting time to be engaging with science in 2024 because now you honestly have access to information in real time. We can't really hide it from you until we know the answer, which can take decades. You get to watch the scientific process unfold. So don't gamble if you don't need to, but the answer is we don't know. It could be very dangerous. It could be not dangerous. And we need more information in order to help people make individualized choices. However, I think taking a step back, you can just consider your own scenario. Like, what do you need a ketogenic diet? If you don't, what will be the cost to you of reintroducing carbohydrates? If it would reverse this phenotype, if you are indeed a lean mass hyperresponder and you respond well to carbs in terms of LDL, and also what's your baseline risk? Do you have like two parents who died of heart attacks, or a family history of heart disease? Do you have a personal history of heart disease, or is there no heart disease in your family of which to speak? Those are very different scenarios, and so you really can't generalize from one person to another, but need to do an individualized analysis of your risk and then make your best call, make your best guess. And that's kind of the art of medicine, and that's a discussion between you and your doctor. I'm not going to be able to tell you what to do.
Right. I think you choose, I heard you say you chose Oreo cookies, so to call attention to people. You certainly call mine.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a good thing because, I'm not going to say I'm a fan of low carb diets, but I'm taking a low carb diet because I got insulin resistant, and I found a better way to live and to eat, like low carb way, right? But there's a big resistance in the medical community to this kind of diets just for feeling good, which is
Yeah.
my... Espero que no nos hayan bajado el vivo. Nick Norwitz, there you go. A ver, Nick, si estás. Ahí está, ahí está. A ver. We got cut. Hopefully, I was. There you go. There we go.
Hi, we're back.
I'm paranoid that they are cutting out the live because of this topic. Hopefully not.
Yeah, no.
So,
So you
would
were
you like
asking about the
to
model.
explain the model? Why, if I am lean and have a lot of energy and I am insulin sensitive, my cholesterol goes up? Why is that?
So an important thing to understand is that when you measure cholesterol, what you're measuring is the cholesterol that's contained in these little particles, these little spheres that are floating around in the blood. And there are different names for these spheres depending on their class. One is called LDL, one is called HDL particles, and even within those there are subtypes. But high level, you have your LDL and your HDL particles, and your LDL derived from something called VLDL. And what VLDL are is they're these big boats that are packed full of stored fat. And when you shift from a carb-based metabolism to a fat-based metabolism, especially when you're lean and insulin sensitive, and this system really gets ramped up, your liver sends out these VLDLs that are packed with fat for your muscles to burn and to replenish your fat cells, which are really burning through the fat and releasing it really quickly. And when these big VLDL have the fat sucked out of them, they become these LDL. And so the LDL cholesterol goes up. And also, as the big VLDL sphere shrinks into a smaller LDL, if you think about having a big sphere and you shrink it, as you pull out the core, you also need to decrease the surface area of the sphere. And so little surface area components get blebbed off, and you also get an increase in HDL cholesterol. So what you end up with is very high LDL. The VLDL becomes the LDL. The high HDL, because you lose surface area, gets picked up by the HDL. And then the low triglycerides, because the fat is being burned so quickly out of the blood.
And because you have no glycogen in the liver, zero.
Well, not zero. It's being decreased. You never have fully zero glycogen, but the presumably the carb stores in your liver are going down, which is a signal to your body of, oh, I don't have carbs to burn or carbs to release into the blood. You might actually have some carbs in your muscle. Your muscle is very stingy. It doesn't give carbs to the blood. So if there's carbs in your muscle, they keep it for themselves. Which is sometimes why you can perform highly, energetic activities while you're low carb. But your liver, carbs can be released into your blood to feed things like red blood cells or the brain. And when your body realizes, oh, the carb stores in my liver are low, and this is what I'd use to defend my blood sugar, then it's going to shift more to fat burning because you want to reserve those carbs, whatever's left. So it's an adaptive system.
So so you claim that this is physiologic and you could go on living. How are you studying yourself? Did you do a calcium score or a Doppler of your arteries? Still, you're a very young man, but maybe is there's a way to study if we're okay?
Yeah. So I will say we need to study populations with this phenotype, which we're doing. The first study we had came out, showed no increased plaque. Now, it's very preliminary, but there was at least no signal to rapid plaque progression. You asked if I'd scanned myself. I've gotten scans, including coronary CT angiography. My arteries are totally clear, but like you mentioned, I'm quite young. So even though I've been low carb for years, I wouldn't extrapolate that to you as an individual. And another thing I'll say is, I said this is adaptive, and you said this is adaptive. I do think it's a normal physiologic response.
Okay.
However, just because something is a normal physiologic response doesn't necessarily mean it's safe long term. You can have something that's adaptive over the short term, and it could be harmful over the long term. Think about your stress response, right? we evolved a great stress response so that we know if we're being hunted by like a saber-toothed tiger, we could run away, which is great. But when you chronically activate that stress response, it can be harmful to the body over the long term. So I can simultaneously tell you, I think this is adaptive and normal physiology, and I'm not confident it's safe. So again, we're back to, we don't know. This is very interesting, and we have more work to do in studying and understanding why this occurs.
As you say, this is very polarized. But for example, the keto community or the carnivore community, they are convinced that this, that we should not have any carbs at all. That we are, I mean, like carbs, especially the recommendations, are excessively wrongly recommended for our species. What do you think about that? They are right, they are in the middle.
I think I'm not a fan of generally the dietary guidance that most nations give, including the U.S. I would say I don't think we evolved as pure carnivores. I think we evolved as omnivores to eat both plant and animal foods. That said, we live in a very different environment now, and a lot of people do have metabolic diseases that they struggle with. So treatment is different than prevention. And if you already have metabolic disease where you're insulin resistant, then it can be therapeutic to reduce carbohydrates. So do I think that fruit is poison because it has sugar? Absolutely not. But I do think that a lot of people struggle with metabolic syndrome, obesity, insulin resistance. And for those people, it probably makes more sense to lower your carbohydrate intake. And that could mean reducing things like even sugary fruit intake in favor of things like meats and fish and eggs and avocados. So it's really matching your intake to your metabolic status, Ask yourself the question, am I someone who struggles with weight, who's not very active, who's insulin resistant? And if that's you probably would do better with lower carb. Or maybe you're someone who is a young, athlete. And if that's you and you're otherwise healthy, then I'm not going to tell you to fear a banana. Right. I think high level, it's best to reduce your intake of highly processed foods. That's pretty unnecessary. And I like to analogize it to kind of like spinning a roulette wheel. When you go to the what is it, the casinos, and you spin the wheel and you're going to see what it lands on. It's like that. It's like, you might be able to get away with it for a little while. When I was a kid, I ate a lot of sugary cereals, Nutella, the junk food, and I got away with it for a little while, but I kept spinning that wheel, and eventually it caught up with me. So I think people don't realize that you can be unhealthy and be damaged by these, even if you're not showing signs of obesity. So I think high level, it's the logical thing a lot of us know. Like, don't have sugary sodas, don't have processed food, eat whole foods as best you can, and then going beyond that, ask the question, what am I optimizing for, and how am I going to get there? Am I trying to perform in marathons? Okay, have some bananas. Am I trying to lose weight? Okay, try to focus on the meat and eggs and leafy greens, So there is no one size fits all. I'm not going to tell you carnivore is best or vegetarian is best. I'm just going to give you the pretty basic, broad advice of eat single food ingredients, and then beyond that, be a scientist on yourself.
Right.
Think about what your body needs, and then iterate and learn and test on yourself and see how you feel and see how things evolve. Because nobody can tell you what's best for you other than you.
I always say, I teach you to be your own doctor, because I really don't know what works best for you. I'm trying to figure out what works best for me. And I have 25 years of assisting patients. So I totally agree with that. And I was wondering, because you proposed this model, right? In PubMed, the lipid energy model. And you are on a trial now with Dave Feldman. Is that right?
Yes. So Dave
can
originally came up. Yeah. We have a few studies ongoing. I will credit Dave with originally coming up with the idea of the lipid energy model, which we've developed together. One trial we have ongoing looking at people with a phenotype like this, lean people with high cholesterol who are low carb. We're looking at how much plaque is developing in their arteries as compared to a control group with much lower cholesterol. And what we're finding is thus far, we've seen no increase in plaque in the lean people with high cholesterol as compared to controls. There are caveats that go along with that. No study is perfect, but thus far, we have not seen an increase in plaque, which, if anything, is reassuring. But I won't say that this one study is going to change the game. But it is going to stimulate conversation because it's provocative to say, look, we have these people with massively high cholesterol, and actually they don't have more plaque. So that's interesting. It's not consistent with the conventional narrative, and we have more work to do. And hopefully people will get interested. And I see somebody commenting on, and the work of Adrian, 100%. Yes, Adrian Sotomoda is a physician in Mexico City, MD, PhD, absolutely brilliant. One of my best friends in the world. We met at Oxford. He literally saved my life once or twice when I wasn't well. So he's one of our colleagues that's really spearheading this research. So credit to Adrian as well. Thank you
So,
to the comment.
is there any preliminary thing of that publication that we can read on?
Yes, so we have an abstract that's out, and you can skim through my Twitter page for that, and also my Instagram where I posted a graph. I will say the paper on that study, the data of which have already been announced, will be out shortly. It's been accepted. And when you publish a paper, generally you get accepted, and then you get these things called author proofs, where you send in like the grammar corrections, and I've sent those in. So it actually should be out any day now. It could be out this week. I'm hoping it is. And when it's out, I have a video prepared. I'll drop that. So the data have been released, and in terms of the first paper on it, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and like click notifications. I'm hoping that the actual paper will be out this week, and I'll go through the graphs and explain, what the data show. And then hopefully we'll get a lot of conversation and more on this. And if you really want a deep dive, I just did a 5-hour podcast with Simon Hill at the Proof.
I heard
So
some of it,
if
yes.
you want to dive into this topic and get into the nitty gritty, we talk a little bit more about cholesterol, lean mass hyperresponders. This is going to be a conversation that's going to be ongoing for months and years to come. So please get involved, ask questions. I answer as many as I possibly can across social media, and I'm trying to get more involved.
And follow Nick right now. And now, Nick, can you tell us how was the study Oreo versus statins? How was for people, and how were the results?
So the Oreo versus statin study was a very, very small trial of one that I did on myself. And the purpose of it was to attract attention to this whole body of research we're doing on lean mass hyperresponders, because the fact of the matter is, headlines get attention. They just do. You have to be a pragmatist and acknowledge that the flashy headlines will get attention. And we have this cool research, but I want to be able to make it interesting to the public. So in order to capture attention, because I don't have millions of dollars for ads or multi-million-dollar studies, I decided I was going to do this provocative experiment where I showed, look, based on my understanding of the physiology, the work we've done, I should be able to manipulate my cholesterol levels in a very weird way, which is to lower my cholesterol with Oreo cookies, because that's what the lipid energy model will predict, that if I go off low carb by adding Oreo cookies, so I eat my normal ketogenic diet, I'm eating lots of fat, in fact, I'm eating more fat because I'm adding Oreo cookies, but my cholesterol should go down. So it presents this really interesting controversy, right? Because everybody agrees, everybody knows Oreos are not a health food. So if I'm eating Oreos and I'm having a decrease in cholesterol, which we assume is healthy, then it's a paradox. It's interesting. It's like, why is this unhealthy thing having a, quote, healthy result? And it makes you think. So I did a study where I indeed showed that Oreos lowered my cholesterol even more than statin drugs. Actually, they lowered my cholesterol more than you'd expect any drug in the world to lower cholesterol. And I'm not putting a value statement on Oreos or cholesterols or statins, but I'm presenting everybody with this provocative paradox of, why does this occur? And when you have a paradox like that, it means there's something we don't understand. So it's something that I put out there, again, not to put a value judgment on cholesterol or statins, but to encourage everybody to look this way, engage in our research, and think about this phenomenon. Because I think scientifically, it's very interesting, and I want to make that scientific curiosity accessible to everyone. I realize this can get very nuanced, and I can talk for dozens of hours on it, but at a very high level, to just acknowledge, look, science is a process, and you now in 2024 get to engage with it as it's developing. And me and my colleagues, are going to do our best to try to get out here on social media, on different platforms, and try to translate to you the best we can what's going on. We're not going to pretend that we have all the answers, but we want to engage you in this process of exploring human physiology, because that exploration, I think, is something that is really cool and something that everybody should deserve to be, kind of get a peek into. So as long as you are someone who can be okay with phrases like "I don't know," but we're gonna find out, then we can get along, and you should follow me, because I'm not going to be someone who promises you snake oil. I'm going to be someone who comes to you and says, "This is what we're doing to try to figure out what's going on here. This is something really interesting. Here's how we're going to figure it out, but we don't know the answers yet." It's always going to be a process, and I think that process is very cool. I hope you do too.
Right. And also people, for example, I'm a physician. I have a lot of followers. What I say here is not a recommendation. It's not a medical recommendation. It's impossible to do that. So I celebrate you. First, you're a brilliant study from Oxford and Harvard. And I wish at your age, I would have, had your questions in mind, because I think now it's very important for young people, not only physicians, for everybody to question, doctor, do I really need statins? What is the real benefit of a statin? Because people think, okay, I take this pill and I'm okay, and I can keep on with my shitty lifestyle, and it's not like that, and people believe that. So it's very important for general population to know about these studies, I think.
Yeah, I think at a very high level, I know there's a lot of polarization on social media. I know there are people telling you statins are good, statins are bad, do this, do that. And there's a lot of controversy. I think if there's one thing.
Bueno, vamos de vuelta con lo de hiperrespondedores. Nick, if you are there, I think maybe your phone rang or something. Let me see if you are there. Nick Norwitz estaba diciendo que, ahí estás, que bueno, que estas no son recomendaciones médicas, que justamente es lo que decíamos siempre, hay que hacerse las preguntas, ¿no? Hay que hacerse las preguntas, a ver si está este Nick. Nick Norwitz es... Ahí está, a ver. Invitar a unirse. Ahí te invité, Nick. Se me fue Nick Norwitz. Bueno. A ver. No, no te veo. Ahí le estoy mandando un mensaje que estoy en vivo. I am live now. A ver si podés unirte. A ver. Ahí estás. Bueno, se nos cortó, es la tercera vez que viene Nick. A ver si aparece Nick. Vamos. Hello, hello. There you go. I don't know what happened.
Sorry, that was probably on my end. And anyway, we were talking. Oh, I was just making a comment about. We were talking about being your own doctor, and I think there's a lot of polarization in social media, and people, I think, putting their flagpole in the sand and being kind of adversarial for the sake of being adversarial, which can get confused with asking genuine questions. And I think something that my dad taught me, which is maybe one of the most important lessons I've learned in life, is like, it's okay to ask hard questions. And if you're not getting satisfactory answers, doesn't matter who it's from, is it a friend, a parent, a teacher, a doctor, if you ask a genuine question, a sincere question, and you're not getting the answer, keep asking that question, because it's probably a good one to ask. And you should always feel, entitled to pursuing your own curiosity. So it sometimes can get you in trouble, definitely gets me in trouble, but I've never regretted it.
Right. I can not agree more. I couldn't agree more. So Nick, where can people find you in social media, and what do you recommend curious people to read other than your study, which is free, right? We can
Yeah.
get it online free.
Oh, we always try to make all of our studies open access with very few exceptions. I would say I'm at Nick Norwitz, NickNorwitz, on all social medias. So I've been most active historically on Twitter. I'm now trying to be active on Instagram. I made a Threads a couple days ago. My YouTube channel is where I do most of my paper breakdown. So if you want a visual breakdown where I walk through the data of like the most recent studies in the top science journals and kind of try to tell them in engaging ways, like I can tell a story about methylglyoxal and cancer through the lens of Harry Potter, we'll have fun with it. Then you can follow me on YouTube. I have a newsletter. All of these things you can find via my various socials. I'm the only Nick Norwitz that I know of. So if you look me up on your preferred platform, you'll probably be able to find me. And I do try to engage as much as possible, reply on as many platforms as possible, particularly in YouTube comments in the first day or so that the video drops. So if you're trying to get a reply from me, as things scale up, it becomes less and less feasible to answer every single reply. But I would say I reply to like at least 200 comments a day. So I will try to get to your comments. I do like engaging with people. So it's a nice privilege of the size I'm at right now that I generally get to a lot of people. But anyway, thank you for having me on, and thank you people for listening.
Hope this helps you. Unluckily, we got cut 3 times, but I hope it helps you spread your message, especially in Latin America. There's a lot of interest on at least in my community. So thank you for being here, and maybe we can do this in another way, more organized later when you have more time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. Have a nice day. Bye
Bye.
bye.